and the recording will live on the Augusta Baker homepage. And I will pop that link into the chat after we get started. So we're going to give Amanda a second to get slides set up. And I see more people coming into the room. And thank you so much for joining us. And we will get started in just a moment.
Okay, it took me a minute to figure out how to unmute myself. Hi, everybody. Let me just get set up real quickly. And y'all can, I'm assuming you can see okay, good. All right, so I titled this presentation, um, We Are the Cavalry, School Librarians on the Front Line. And the title is, it's an article that apparently I've been working on for 2 years and I haven't done it yet. I have notes in my head of things I wanted to say. A good friend of mine, we've been writing back and forth. We eventually want to make this an article, a piece that we post, called We Are the Cavalry, because, book banning and censorship attempts we've always had censorship attempts, probably since there's been the written word, but or the spoken word, I guess you could say also. But the past 3 or 4 years have been particularly horrendous for school librarians, public librarians, and a couple of years ago when I first started being targeted, I kept saying, "Where's the help? When's somebody going to come help us?" Because I felt so very alone, in being targeted and harassed. And yeah, we have national organizations, but there's only so much a national organization like ALA or Every Library or PEN or NCAC that they can do when you consider how many thousands of librarians there are and how many thousands of libraries there are across the United States. So I kept saying, when's the cavalry going to ride in, like in the movies where they come in and they save the day. And then I realized that's not happening. We are the cavalry. And so that's why I titled my presentation this. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Um, my name is Amanda Jones, and what you see on the screen, two pictures of my school library. I'm very proud of it. It's very small but mighty. If you had seen it, I wish I had before pictures because it has come a very long way. But this is my 24th year in education, and I am going to pop the link. Let's see if I'll pop this link in so that you can have access to the resources. But I've been at the same school for 24 years. I've worked here. I was 14 years as an English language arts teacher and 10 years now as a school librarian. This is the same school that I attended as a child. I have grand students. I think 8 coworkers now that I taught in 7th grade that are now coworkers. So I feel very, very old. But I do love my school. I love my community. And when you consider that not only did I attend here, but I've been here for 24 years, I've spent over half my life at this school. So and hopefully I'm here for the next 6 till I can retire. We shall see. But the current state of our country, oh, I don't even want to think about it. Oh, right. I was doom scrolling right before I got on. Um, uh, just today I saw that Doge has cut a bunch of grants to different public libraries and library programs today. And one of my very dear friends that works at Queens College was affected today. So I'm not in a good state of mind, I guess, to be talking about the current state of affairs in the country. Anybody that's been paying attention, has seen that we've had an unprecedented amount of censorship attempts and book bans and things like that. PEN America, they have to publish, PEN America and ALA are going to be coming out soon with an updated report, but 16,000 book bans in public schools since 2021. Just in the 2023 to 2024 school year, we've seen 10,000 books banned, which is 4,000 unique titles. And I was actually surprised. Florida, 45% is from Florida. I was not surprised about that, but I was surprised that 36% came from Iowa. I didn't realize that so many were from Iowa. This has happened in 29 states. That's just what's been reported. So we do know that the ALA estimates, I think it was like 82 at the minimum, 82% of bans and challenges and censorship attempts aren't even reported. So it could be all 50 for all we know. 222 public school districts have been affected so far, and it seems to be growing worse by the day. And I'm going to drop the link to the resources in here, but if you Google Louisiana Citizens Against Censorship, there's a resource page that has this infographic that's very small to see on a computer. But it's kind of, one of the founding members of Louisiana Citizens Against Censorship, and I created this infographic to show it's so much more than the books, because it is the books and the stories and the people that they represent. And it is attack, on that. But we're also seeing unprecedented takeovers of library boards of control and school boards. We're seeing an unprecedented amount of politicians who are saying that libraries are bad. And I never thought in my lifetime, I mean, I never thought it would happen that I would hear legislators saying that libraries are bad things. I was listening yesterday. A friend of mine is in Arkansas, and she was going to testify today for a positive bill for once in Arkansas about digital literacy. But she's like, you should see the what happened in our legislature today. So I watched the video, and there was Senator Sullivan was going on and on about how horrible librarians are and how incompetent we are. And I'm just thinking, who hurt him? But we're seeing that happen. We're seeing sweeping legislation, and we're coming to realize, or I've come to realize, that the ultimate goal is to not only marginalize people and groups and further, hide stories, but there's an attack on public education and public libraries. And we've seen it, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, we've seen that in the past few weeks. They've dismissed all the employees. It just gets worse and worse every day. So the American Library Association, their numbers are a little different than Penn's. But I do like how they focused this past year on making sure they talked about soft censorship, where books are not being purchased or they're placed in restricted areas. And I keep arguing with librarians. They're like, oh, well, we'll just put them in this section. We'll have a section. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's illegal. We're not going to do that. At least I'm not in my library. But I do, as someone who has outspoken, I talk a lot about privilege, and I have the privilege of being outspoken, and I have friends that are not. So I understand that even though I wouldn't do it, I understand why some people second guess every single purchase they make, and have the past few years, because it's not fun to be targeted and harassed, and it's not good. I've had several school librarians in my district that said, well, I haven't been buying anything over an eighth grade interest level because I'm scared of being attacked. These are high school librarians, and they're scared. They've told me, I don't want to be the next you. And I'm like, oh, thanks. But they've seen how I've been targeted and harassed, and my every move is documented like I'm some horrible, person, like probably watching me on the screen right now on the computer. So I get it, but we have to fight back. The National Coalition Against Censorship, if you're not a member, you should really try to join. They have all sorts of information on their website. Tennessee, Rutherford County in Tennessee has been they've been through it lately. Not just in school libraries, but in their public libraries. They're removing materials in their public libraries. Virginia, they're not following policies. And I don't want to get too much into it in my district right now, but I found out that there's some things happening in my district where books are being taken off the shelves under the guise of being weeded. And I'm going to have to be the one that takes action, and I'm going to be worried that they're going to fire me when I do take action. When I bring it to the public's attention that this is happening. There's actually a huge lawsuit right now. If you've not heard about it, the Llano, Texas, it's the Leela Green, Leela Green. I always forget the order of her last two names. And the Llano 7, they're suing the public library because the library was removing books under the guise of weeding, and that's they were really just removing them. So that lawsuit is happening in Texas, but it's actually a federal suit, and they tried it in Louisiana in the Fifth Circuit. So I'm really waiting on that to see what the verdict is to decide my next move here in my own district. But we're seeing Florida, places like Florida, and I know this has happened in South Carolina, where review committees have said there's nothing wrong with these books, and school districts are removing them anyway. And that's what we're seeing all across the United States. Um, just to make you aware of something else happening in Utah, they passed a law in Utah that if three school districts have banned a book, then it becomes a statewide ban. So as of right now, as of today, there are 17 books banned statewide in Utah because three school districts objected to it. They even passed a law that students aren't even allowed to bring banned books to school. So you can be a parent that buys a book for your child or goes to the public library and gives a book your child permission. They can even be an 18-year-old, a senior in high school that has permission to read these books, and they will get in trouble for having them at school because they're on the banned book list. This is America. This is happening. And of course I never thought the U.S. government was going to gaslight me, but the U.S. Department of Education posted that they're ending the Biden book ban hoax. And I know and y'all all know from seeing it happen that books are being banned. And so this is what's happening across the country. And at the beginning, I kept saying, oh, when are the publishers going to come in and help us? Penguin Random House stepped it up, and we've seen the top 5 join in lawsuits. And so there is good news with that. They are stepping in and they are filing lawsuits. But this is happening everywhere. I can name 4 or 5 districts just in Louisiana. Then you look at all the states, not just, and then you've got Washington, D.C., and you've got all the different territories and, um, you know, armed forces bases in other countries were still the United States, and this is happening. There's only so many lawsuits that you can get in. And I kept saying, well, when are the library supply companies? They get their money from us. We're the ones purchasing. If all the libraries are shut down, they're not going to have a library supply business. Where are they going to come in? Where are they going to help us? And then I just came to the realization that nobody's coming and we have to save ourselves. And it's not just up to us as librarians. Of course, yes, we have to set the good example and we have to lead the charge. But it's going to take the work of building coalitions in all the residents in your communities, which from South Carolina, Beaufort, the community came together. Sometimes even that doesn't matter. They'll circumvent policies and things. So we start looking at ways to stand firm, ways to hold the line, stand your ground. Um, you know, people that have heard me talk before are probably tired of hearing me say this quote, but I love this quote, and that's to use your power and privilege for purpose. Samira Ahmed, author Samira Ahmed, young adult and middle grade author, said that at ASL 23, and I heard her, and I got it tattooed on my wrist to remind me, because there is a lot of privilege in myself. I'm a white, straight, cisgender woman, and the only person that has more privilege than me is my white male cisgender counterpart. And you look at the field of librarianship, it's largely white women, and we have to use our voices. It's not up to everyone else that's not white, straight, cisgender to, their groups have been historically marginalized, have been fighting, and they're tired. And when I became a school librarian, I became a school librarian for every kid in my community, every kid, not just the white, straight ones, cisgendered ones. I became a librarian for every single kid. And so I will do my best to use my power and privilege afforded. And in 2021, I was named an SLJ Librarian of the Year. And that gives you a platform, and if you're not going to use your platform, that's a waste of a platform. So I try to do what I can. And that's all I ask of everybody else. Do what you can. And sometimes doing what you can is just showing up and sitting quietly, but you're there for support of others who are speaking out. And sometimes it's just saying in an email, but we all have to do what we can. And there comes a time sometimes when you have to say, do I take a stand or do I let this go? Do I let it go? Do I fight back? I've had to let some things go in my own district. In my own fight here in Louisiana, where I am from, it's been in the public library so far. So far, it's it's not going to be so, or that's another day. But so far, our fight is in the public library, and some things I have to let go because you can't nitpick every single thing, and I look at the greater good. And but what I can't let go is the banning of books, and I will not let that go. In the circumventing policies and procedures to get around things, I'm not going to let that go. So you think about it. We're each one individual person, and people say, "Oh, I'm just one person. What can I do?" Well, there's that Rachel Platten song that they play like every Olympics and every like movie where somebody's like an underdog and they're trying to. I know it's played out, but I just I love that lyric. You can make a big wave. You can send something in motion. Um, and back in 2022, I went and spoke out at a public library board meeting in my hometown, my library where I've lived my entire life. I just went. 30 other people spoke. I went and spoke. I didn't think anything of it. Didn't realize storm that was going to cause. Um, you know, apparently I became an activist and it set into motion these ripple effects that now I have a book and I'm in a documentary and but um, people will tell me all the time about ripple effects they'll remind me of ripple effects that we have. I spoke out once and it had a ripple effect, and other people have emailed me and said, well, if you can speak out, I can speak out too. So you never know the effect you will have on other people. You also want to play on other people's nostalgia. I have found that nostalgia can be really, really big deal with people. When I'm talking about the books that we grew up with. Um, I've come across a lot of people that are, librarians are giving kids porn, and I'm like, no, they're not. And they don't want to listen. But I try to break it down to them. I like get them off track. And I'm like, what book did you like when you were little? And they'll say, oh, I liked, um, whatever they liked. Ramona Quimby, age 8, Babysitter's Club, Judy Blume. Judy Blume always get everybody. Judy Blume. Um, but then I'll say, did you read Flowers in the Attic? Oh, yes. And I had to sneak it. And I'm like, and you turned out okay, didn't you? So you're fine. But I talk about that. I'm like, well, what if your librarian was jailed because you read Flowers in the Attic? So like you can use nostalgia as a way. You could say, do you think Flowers in the Attic was pornography? Was it that bad? And so you start talking about these things, and you get people in a conversation, and you talk about how books make us who they are. And I'll go from there to say, well, Flowers in the Attic led me to other books like The Color Purple, Alice Walker, and The Bone Setter's Daughter, or The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. I'm like, what kind of person would I be if I hadn't read that book? And so I get into those conversations. So that's something you can do. You can form alliances. Y'all have some strong alliances in South Carolina, and Florida has the Florida Freedom to Read Project, Texas Freedom to Read Project. I was wearing at school yesterday. I wore my Let Utah Reads shirt yesterday to school, and kids are asking me about it. You can form an alliance though. Um, and I'll give you this link and you can click on. I formed the Livingston Parish Library Alliance to fight back in my own, because we're parishes in Louisiana, not counties. And I eventually helped formulate with several other women, and now men too, the Louisiana Citizens Against Censorship. We have to fight back. We have to dispel those lies. We have to, that means making a website and social media page to fight back. That's what we have to do. But what else you can do? You can watch those agendas, watch the school board meeting agendas, watch the library board meeting agendas, see what's happening, because they're so sneaky. They like to sneak stuff in. Attend meetings if you can. Try to all wear one color. We all wear purple a lot of times, because we say that libraries should be nonpartisan, and red and blue makes purple, and that our Livingston Parish Library Alliance is nonpartisan, and that we have people from all walks of life and all different religions, but also both sides of the political spectrum. And we all come together for our libraries. You want to voice opposition when you can. You want to vote. You want to read the news. A good place to start, because there's a lot of things out there. A good place to start is Kelly Jensen puts out censorship roundup every Friday. She'll post censorship articles, and that's how I learn about what's happening. You can look at you can utilize something like Action Network, which is a free platform to email your legislators. We use it to email we're ruled by parish councilmen. So we have it set up to we can do action plans because people want to help, but they don't know how. And they want to email your leaders, but they might not know what to say. So we'll formulate a template and all they have to do is fill in their names and send it through Action Network. We use that a lot. We also use book resumes a lot for Unite Against Book Bans. They have book resumes. The last 5 books we had challenged in our public library, I went to Unite Against Book Bans and found the book resumes, and I put them on the social media and on our website. And we all took turns getting up and talking about, the different books. It was all right there. Every award, everything you wanted to know about the books, even quotes from the author. You want to make sure you're looking at legislation, not just in your state, but in other states and national legislation. Every library has a very good website. They have a legislation watch, and you can look at not only adverse legislation against librarians and libraries, but they also have some positive bills, freedom to read acts and things that you can follow. You can follow on their website and you can see where they are in committees. I went on there last year and I wrote a bill for Louisiana, a right to read act. And of course, I couldn't get a single legislator to file it. That didn't stop me from trying to get this year. They still wouldn't file it for me this year, but I'm going to keep trying every year. But you can go in there and get ideas of other legislation, positive legislation, and try to get those filed. You can look at adverse legislation and you can see, was it defeated? Then contact those people. I contacted Georgia last year and I was like, how did y'all defeat this bill? I need to know. What were your talking points? There's a legislative toolkit on ALA's website, and these are links. And again, I'll put the link in there for you. But legislative toolkits, but you also need to know your First Amendment cases. The American Library Association has been hosting a program called Law for Librarians, and it's usually a school librarian and either a public or an academic librarian from each state. I know I was in the cohort a year ago, and there was 2 of us from each state, and we learned, it was 2 days, and we learned all about all of the laws, to know our rights and things. And I went back, and my Janelle Zeddy, who was also an academic librarian from Louisiana, and we have redelivered to Louisiana librarians. So look out for whoever's doing that in your state. It might be Skazzle. Actually, yeah, it was Skazzle because I remember Tamara Cox was there. So she was there. So I'm sure Jamie has done some Law for Librarians things. Ask them if they can share it with you, look at it again. But you want to make sure you know what's going on. And I don't know these court cases off the top of my head. If you said, what is PICO? I could say, okay, well, let me see, PICO. If you give me a minute, I could probably tell you what happened in PICO, but I know, I've heard of it and I know what it connects to. And when people will say, in my district, they said, well, they wanted to pass a policy where they would sequester books and move them to a different section. And I was like, no, no, no. That's Island of Trees versus Wichita Falls or something like that. Let me look it up. So I had to go look it up, but I had the knowledge that I knew it was somewhere in there. I just had to remember. So I try to read so that I will keep up on these things and look at my links. Something you need to make sure you notice that you know about is the serious value test, which is kind of has to do with PICO. It's a prong of the Miller test. But you hear a lot about things are harmful to minors. You know, Susie Q, Mom for Liberty, can't decide on her own that something is harmful to minors and it becomes so. A court has to say that. Tiffany Justice can't just say this book is harmful to minors and a school remove it from their shelves. Only a court system can say a book is obscene or harmful to minors, and that's Pope versus Illinois. So if you've never heard of that case, go and look at it. And it involves looking at works as a whole. So get used to that. Go read about the Miller test. Be knowledgeable. And I find that most librarians are. When we're talking about schools and book removals, make sure you're looking at Board of Education versus PICO. There's PICO. You can't just take a book off the shelf because you don't like the ideas behind it. There has to be reasoning, and it can't just be because you don't like the ideas, or the whole majority of the school is this religion and that book is this, talks about this religion or whatever. You can't, that's not a thing that should be doing. And so when I give you this link, these resources, there's some letters that I have used. Now, these are letters that I've used in Louisiana, so it might be a little different in your states. Um, but it kind of gives you an idea of how to word it. If you sense that open meetings violations are happening, this template will give you an idea. If they are attempting to remove and relocate, it looks like a legal letter. I'm not a lawyer, so don't say Amanda Jones gave me legal advice. But I did get this letter from an attorney, and so you could use it and say, write your own letters. Resources, there's tons of resources, and you'll know most of these, so I'm gonna move on. But finding hope, and I kind of wanted to talk to you about finding hope, because we all know about the book bans and the soft censorship, and we all know about the legislation, and we all, and we could all learn some more and brush up. It just seems like every time I open up my phone, it's like doomsday. This is happening and this is happening, and now, like I said today, I found out a friend in Queens just lost her grant. And it was examining the role of, I want to say, LGBTQ plus and BIPOC characters in manga. It was a study, and I've seen her work, and it's phenomenal. And they just gutted it. So when things like that happen, we have to find hope. So some things that give me hope, in December, there was a bill in Arkansas, and it became a law. It's an Act 439 or 493 or something like that. That became a law, and it was criminalizing librarians. And parts of it were struck down in December. So that was a victory. So we'll take little victories here and there. Something popped up. Now I was working today, so I didn't get to read about it, but through ALA Connect, something popped up and said there was a win in Idaho today, or maybe it was not Idaho, Iowa, one of the I states. And I was like, oh, and they said there was a win in court. So I need to go up and read on that. There's constantly, you're seeing DeSantis has dialed back some things in Florida because of some court cases. People are winning. You see Suzette Baker, public librarian in Texas, who is in Llano. This is a separate Llano case. She got fired because she refused to remove books from the shelf. She just won her settlement. She settled $250,000 for wrongful termination. So we're seeing wins, and something else that gives me hope is that I come across a lot of librarians that don't understand Dr. Rudy and Sims Bishop, the concept of windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors, and that's unfortunate for them. Um, you know, I feel sorry for them. Again, who hurt you that you don't understand basic human decency and rights and reading? But I do have hope because there are so many of us that do. There are so many of us out there that understand the importance of books being windows and mirrors and sliding glass doors, and understand the importance of what Dr. Rudy and Sims Bishop was talking about. We get it. And there's more of us than there are of them. I know because I've spoken in 30 different states in the past year and a half, and there are so many of us out there. I have hope because of librarians. And there's just some librarians from the last ALA. I think this is all from the last ALA. Um, you know, Librarians are doing the work. And not just librarians, but residents of communities are doing work. Students, moms, dads, uncles, grandparents. I saw yesterday in the Tennessee legislature, an 80-year-old woman refused to get up, and she was protesting. Yeah, Valerie's like, Mama Cook, yeah. And she was like 80, and she's like, this is not going to stand. And it took like 16 state troopers to get her out of there. And she was just sitting there. And I was like, how inspirational is that? Look at Cory Booker. Like, what did he talk like over 25 hours? Or I should say Senator Cory Booker, um, 25 hours spoke, and he made those words count, and I look at, there's hope in that, here in Louisiana. Well, I'll talk about that in a minute, but, I was very fortunate to see Stacey Abrams speak, and her mom is a retired public librarian. And Stacey Abrams has several books out. She loves the power of the written word and the power of speaking out and advocacy. And when I heard her speak, she said something that I was just sitting there listening. And I said, "Ooh, that's a good quote." And I got my phone out. My friend, a librarian friend, Amanda Lee, was next to me. And I'm like, "That's a good quote. We got to write it down." And I wrote it down. And I swear I've used it in every presentation since then. And it was, "We must advocate with empathy and measure success and progress and not victories." So, yeah, we've had a couple of little victories lately. We're going to have some more. We're going to have some losses. But even when we have the losses, we're making progress just in the act of defiance, of speaking out and protesting and talking against it and saying, no, this is not okay. To remove this book and this story and this person and these people, this is not okay. And so I take hope in this quote about how we have to measure success in progress, and not victory. Um, and I questioned putting this slide up with this picture that I made. But South Carolina has had a couple of little, I know things are still up in the air, but every time something's halting and they're questioning something, if it makes Ellen mad, it makes me happy. So, I gotta stop saying that. But if it makes Ryan Walters happy, I mean sad. If it makes Ryan Walters sad in Oklahoma, it makes me happy. So there's little victories here and there, and every time, even if it's not a victory, just the act of speaking out, even if it's a halt for just a day or a week, it's progress where people are questioning, like, and what else? Something else that gives me hope is the kids. The kids are all right, Dalo, I can talk days about Dalo. I love them so much. Dalo, you've got Dalo in South Carolina, you've got Peru in Pennsylvania, and Seat in Texas, and students protecting education. And if you haven't heard of E-Train, there's a picture of him. Welcome to E-Train. This little boy, I don't know, I think he's like 13, 14. He's advocating left and right from his home on his little computer and doing talks. I just love that kid, and you look at so many students are coming out and speaking, and they have, you know, becoming youth ambassadors for Banned Book Weeks. And they're going to testify. Cameron Samuels, who was, I think they started out in Texas as a member of SEAT, might have founded SEAT, Students, I forgot what SEAT stands for, the acronym, um, Students Educating something. But Cameron Samuels, you know, testified in U.S. Congress with Dr. Emily Nix. Like, how awesome is that? So I see these students that, they give me hope for the future. The students are all right. Also, I think about what we put out in the world, we get back. So I go back to that quote, Stacey Abrams, you have to advocate with empathy and kindness. And I know my little Ellen sticker was not kind. I'm sorry. But I try to be kind, and when every person tells me God's going to wrap a millstone around my neck and drown me in hell because I'm against book bans, I say bless your heart, and I smile at them because that's what we got to do. The kids are watching, and also I think yeah, you can only get so many chances. Um, the best revenge is success, so keep being successful just in your own right as a human being, and keep pushing forward. And so I keep showing up at every meeting, and I keep trying to build coalitions. And um, I'm now in 3 lawsuits. I'm personally suing people for defamation because there aren't any laws there's no court precedent right now to protect librarians and educators from defamation for being called groomer online. There's nothing. They've passed it in Canada. They got it in Canada. There's some court precedent in Canada, but not in the US. So I'm going to keep pushing. And I wish I could talk more about court, but there's been some successes. It's on the upswing right now, but I refuse to be silent. And something else that gives me hope, Band Together will be streaming in like a week. It'll be on streaming platforms. I think I've lost track of my days. Band Together, which I've seen, which is an excellent, excellent documentary. Large focus in Beaufort, South Carolina. Large focus on students from Dalo. I'm in a documentary called The Librarians that is premiered at Sundance, and it is going through the festival circuit right now. It will be streaming on Independent Lens, PBS, and some online streaming platforms in the fall after it goes through the It's doing quite well on the festival circuit. It's executive produced by Sarah Jessica Parker. It's getting traction. That gives me hope that people in the public are going to see these films and it might change a mind, change a heart, maybe. You can hope. But this is supposed to be a pendulum. I don't know. My graphic. But people right now, this is just my opinion. The government's going too hard, too fast. And the pendulum is eventually going to swing back. And we saw that in Louisiana this past weekend. In Louisiana, we are a very, very, very alt-right, far right state. Um, and our governor and our House of Representatives and our Senate are controlled, complete control, far right. I'm talking very far right, no in between. And we had 4 amendments that passed the legislature that the public had to vote on this past weekend, and we defeated all 4. Not only did we defeat it, like it was a landslide defeat. Like our governor is humiliated because the people were like, dude, you've gone too far, too fast. So that's what, like, y'all, I'm hoping that people wake up and they're like, okay, the US government is going too far, too fast, and it'll swing back. And when it is, we'll have already set up our coalitions and our alliances, and we will be like, we've been here the whole time. Join us. Join us. That's what I'm hoping. And so I'll leave you with this Amanda Gorman quote, because I just love Amanda Gorman. And from the hill we climb, the new dawn blooms as we free it. There is always light if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it. And we have to be brave. And so I call you to keep strong, stand strong and to be brave. And if you want to follow along with my story, this is all of my details. I got off that horrible alphabet letter. I'm not on that platform anymore. I'm now on Blue Skies and Instagram. And I will stop sharing this. I'll give you one more second. I'm going to stop sharing it and I'm going to put this URL in the chat and then start answering questions. So I will start answering questions. Let me copy this.
All right. So Amanda, I think we lost your slides a little bit ago.
Do you want me to put it back up?
Or if you don't mind sharing, or I can just send it to the people who registered. Like I know we have privacy issues.
Got it. I just put it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the questions are coming in. Thank you so much. Before we go to the audience questions, just want to ask you a little bit about the book and how's the book tour been going and how's that reception?
So the reception, y'all, the librarians, oh my gosh, I love librarians. Everywhere I go, my mom is like, because I've been to 30 different states in the past year and a half, like physically in 30 different states. And my mom's like, you always are like going sightseeing with people. And like, how do you know all these people? Well, I joined my associations, mother. I joined my state national organizations, and that's how I meet people. But I found out today that so it's not to get too technical, but I've met my advance, basically my book advance. So it's all royalties from here on, which is very good. And it's not to have done it in less than 6 months is like a pretty huge deal. So I'm really excited. And the book, I dedicated it in part to Judy Bloom, and Judy Bloom read it, and she invited me to her bookstore in Florida. So I flew down and hung out with Judy and George a couple weekends ago, and we did a whole talk at her bookstore. But recently, and I haven't really like talked too much about this publicly, but a producer and screenwriter bought the rights for the film. So so we shall see. And maybe something will come of it, maybe something won't.
Yeah.
I get paid either way. So
Exactly. Do you get to play yourself?
no, no. And people keep asking me, like, who would you want to play you? And I'm like, Melissa McCarthy,
It. Love it.
because I'm so foul-mouthed like her. People don't realize how foul-mouthed I am in real life. But yeah, the book is doing very well. And so I can't complain on that front.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. And I love, especially on your socials, when you keep reminding us to make lemonade out of those many lemons you had thrown at you.
I'm trying. I think it was Rhonda Rhonda Knight, or is it McKnight or Knight? She's South Carolina. She told me, or I saw it on the back of one of her books. She's like, you got to make cornbread out of corn. I was like, I might need to use that one because we eat a lot of cornbread in Louisiana. I might use that one, but I'm trying. The people, the book banner people, they hate to see us be successful. So instead of getting online and spouting hate like they do, I just look what I did.
Mhm.
Look what I did.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
All right, we have a question from Jenny. And Jenny wants to know, is there anything that you would have done differently? Have there been any mistakes or missteps?
um, I don't think I would have done anything differently. There's things I know now that I didn't know. That I don't necessarily think I would have changed. Like right at the beginning, my very original speech that put me in the limelight, I identified myself as a resident of my community. I've lived there my whole life, but I also did refer to myself as the 2021 SLJ Librarian of the Year and the current president of the Louisiana Association of School Librarians. And I did that so that the library board would know that I knew what I was talking about, that I was, considered knowledgeable in my field. I wasn't doing it to be like, you look at me. But because of that, the judge ruled me a public figure and was like, oh, you're the head of an organization. Um, the thing is though, because I'm eventually going to have a trial. It's just been stalled for 3 years. I recently won in the Supreme Court in Louisiana. We're going to eventually have a trial. And they were going to rule me a public figure anyway, because at this point, once you've been in the New York Times like 5 times, so would I have changed that? No, not really. Um, there's some things, FOIA stuff, I've sent an email, a personal email during school hours, which every teacher does on school campus. Um, Innocuous, but they FOIA'd and they're like,
Mhm.
breaking news, Amanda Jones is, what do they say, payroll fraud. She emailed a personal email during work hours, and I shouldn't have done a personal email during work hours. Everybody does it. I should have just done it on my phone. So I would have done that differently. But even my principal was like, I was just shopping on Amazon. you know, I don't know that I wouldn't have done anything differently. No.
Gotcha. All right, we have a couple questions from Yana. The first question is, what is the best, smallest step you've taken?
You can do a small step like sending a text of support to somebody. And that's so small. Like today when my friend lost her grant, I just texted her. I just texted we ride at dawn. And she just put a heart on it. She knew. That's something little you can do. I'll see something in South Carolina and I'll send Tamara Cox an email. I'll text. I'll be like, usually like a dirty meme or something. Just to make her laugh though. And that's something small you can do to cheer up somebody that's going through it. And that doesn't take any amount of time, you
Mhm.
know.
Absolutely. What is the talking point that stops people in their tracks when they hear it, especially people who don't agree with you?
Something that stops people in their tracks. Because a lot of people will say, I'm not against book bans, but I don't know. And then they start talking about an LGBTQ plus agenda, and they'll say it like that. And I'm like, first of all, there's no agenda, like whatever. But I'll say, well, what would fix that for you? Because because we're talking about public libraries here. I'm like, what would fix that in a public library? Um, you know, well, their own section, if they had their own section. And I'm like, well, how gay is too gay for you? Like, what's the sliding scale? And then I'm like, are they going to have their own water fountains and bathrooms as well?
Mhm.
And then I'm like, and then are we going to make them sew on patches to identify themselves? And then they're like, well, we could. And then I'm like, do you realize what that sounds like? And then it hits them. And these are usually people that grew up during the civil rights era, my parents' age, because my mom said something similar. And then my mom was like, oh, and I'm like, you see what I'm saying, mother? And once you can, and you know, show them it's similar. And then when I start talking about the arm patch, and then my mom's like, well, my grandfather stormed the beaches of Normandy for fascism. I'm like, okay, mother, well, you can't say that and say, let's have, so that's what I'll use those talk. That stops people if
Mhm.
it's going to.
Right.
Some people are so far along, it doesn't matter what you say.
Mhm, for sure. How do you talk to kids about all of this? Are you proactive or do you wait for them to ask?
So I am actually not allowed to talk to students about this at my school. And that was one of those things I called picking your battles because my students are 9, 10, and 11. And so I could get fired and not be able to teach these children, or I could stay at my job and make sure they have diverse collection. So I choose to make sure I'm here at my job and provide a diverse collection for them and teach them media literacy and critical thinking skills. And, I don't talk to kids that are my students about it. Now, outside, my daughter's in high school. I talk to her friends about it all the time. I talk to, high school age students all the time. I've talked to the Dalo kids about it, and um, I had a funny discussion with some of the students from Dalo about how apparently now I'm a blackmailer because I'm recording conversations and like, I'll play that back. But I joke, but with the students, you talk about how, what I say to my daughter hangs out, thankfully, with people that believe in books and freedom and things. But I'll say to them, every kid at your school deserves to be there and deserves to have books that represent themselves. And they get it when you say that, and I tell them, like I tell my daughter's friends, I'm like, most of the people in my town identify as Christian. And I'm like, but we have a large Sikh population. And I'll say, your friends, they deserve to see characters that are Sikh in books too, and they get that. So you just had to talk to them about it.
Mhm. Okay, next question is from Wendy. What advice or action steps would you give librarians who are newer to the field to help them with the current and upcoming scrutiny about librarians and book bans, et cetera, when people in general are so fragile, especially with lasting emotional and social impacts of COVID?
I would say that newer librarians or newer educators need to be even more careful. Um, because when I talk about privilege, I have been in my school for 24 years. And so when you have been in one place for a really long time, you've established roots and I can point out over 2 decades of stellar observations and things like that. And if you're a newer teacher, or a librarian, you don't have that to draw on, which is kind of like a protection. So maybe at first step back and see what the more seasoned people in your area are doing, but they might not be. So yeah, if you feel strongly about it, speak out, but be very careful. Um, Something I am very glad I did right from the get-go is I went and had my speech approved by HR at my school board before I ever went and spoke. So have a talk with HR, like what's acceptable and what's not. Understand the laws, the free speech laws, because some people will say, how have you not been fired yet? Because I'm doing this after work and I have the right to say what I want. And I'm not breaking any laws and I'm not doing anything unethical. And you can't fire me for speaking my mind, for founding a library alliance. You can't fire me for writing a book about how the community piled on me. you know, so know your rights, make sure you know your rights. Um, but yeah, see, make those good connections with your central office and your district librarian. Um, you know,
Yeah, and I think to, piggyback on something you said a little bit earlier, for those newer in the profession, maybe just showing up, even if you're silent, but to show up to support someone else who may be in a position to say something that you can't, but that still is a demonstration of support, right? That is still you doing something.
very much so, because when I went and spoke the very first time, I had 4 friends from the Louisiana Association of School Librarians sitting in the audience with me. I
Mhm.
didn't have to go by myself. They didn't speak, I did, but they went with me. And I don't know that I would have had the confidence well, yeah, I would, because I just am a loudmouth, but they were in the audience with me.
Yeah. All right. Asking the audience if there are any other questions for Amanda. While people are thinking, I want to hear you talk a little bit more about the documentary that Sarah Jessica just produced and what that experience was like.
That was wild. I so Kim A. Snyder is the director, and she had been filming in Texas. The freedom fighters of Texas and Llano and the librarians in Llano, she had been filming them for 2 or 3 years. And it was started off as a Texas documentary. And then Kim realized this was happening all across the United States. And so she got librarians from Florida, New Jersey, Louisiana, all sorts of places. Um, but I wasn't going to do it. They asked me, Becky Calzada and Carolyn Foote were like, you need to talk to this director. And I looked her up, and she had been nominated for awards and won awards. She was, legitimate. And I looked up, and then I had a Zoom with her, and she's like, let me show you a sizzle. It was like this little clip of filming.
Mhm.
And it was one of my friends in Texas who, and I'm not going to name her, but she used to be really big on the conference circuit, like going around speaking. And she's all but disappeared in the past 2 years because she's been harassed.
Mhm.
And she was in it, and she was crying. And I thought, if she can do it, I can do it too. And so I said yes. And it wasn't until after I had finished filming that they told me, oh, by the way, Sarah Jessica Parker and Maria Cuomo
Pressure.
Cole and Kenneth Cole, the designer. And like, I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, oh, and by the way, you want to come to the Hamptons and meet them? And I was like, what? What? So I have met Sarah Jessica Parker several times. We walked the red carpet with her, several of the librarians. We walked the red carpet at Sundance with her. What I learned about Sarah Jessica Parker is that she's one of 8 children, and she credits the library, and her mother, of course, but the library for raising her. She's like, I lived in my public library down the block. And so she actually has her own imprint, her book imprint, and she very much believes in intellectual freedom and the freedom to read. But the documentary, it follows mostly school librarians, but a public librarian. It follows um, a school board member whose mind was changed in Texas. It follows a parent that speaks for book bans and her child who speaks against them and their relationship. It's very powerful. A pastor in Florida who showed up to defend a school librarian in Florida. Um, it's so powerful, and it's like I've seen it 3 times now, and I cry, but there's some funny parts too because there's just some really funny librarians in it. So you'll be crying, and all of a sudden you laugh, and so like the snot flies out because you're crying because you're snotting, but then you laugh. It's like, but it's so beautifully edited,
Mhm.
and it shows McCarthyism and Nazi Germany and the parallels of what we're seeing.
So, yeah.
And when you put them together, the way they edit it and they show, there's one scene where there's a book burning in Nazi Germany, and it fades to one that happened last year in Missouri.
Mhm.
That's powerful,
Mhm.
you know? So I
Mhm.
can't wait for it to be. They're going to do streamings with PEN America all across the United States for the next, 8 or 9 months, and the film festival circuit. But it will be, well, I say PBS because, tax on PBS. It will be streaming somewhere.
Somewhere.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me think of something else, in terms of what could happen next, in a good way with documentaries and really uplifting these different stories. And I think specifically about not only the newer librarians that were mentioned earlier, but BIPOC librarians, trans librarians, LGBTQ, any marginalized population, right? Because a lot of these marginalized populations are already being harassed for other reasons. And then you compound that with the work that they love and the work that they've chosen to do. So, in your opinion, like, what does that look like? How do we support them? Can we get them a documentary too?
that was the one thing we had. After that we saw the first screening of the documentary, we went out to eat with the director. And she said, what do you think of the film? And we talked about that. We said, well, if you're looking around, we're all white. Like, well, not all, but majority of the people featured were white. Um, and she told me, she said, she had asked several librarians of color and it was too hard. And she said it was just so hard, like, and they didn't want to do it. But we have to try harder because I think that everybody should be included, and I think I'd like to see a documentary told from the point of view of marginalized students that
Mhm.
have had their books taken away and fought back. Um, like completely had them taken away and had their rights. Because there are schools where students that they've taken 800 books off the shelves. There's schools in Houston, they turn the libraries into detention centers.
Right.
Like I want to see, and you look at those populations in Houston, and those are mostly Latino
Mhm.
and Latinx, and so I would like to see, you know, their point of view. What's happening here?
Absolutely. That would be fascinating. And it makes me think of um, your friend at Queens who was working with my friend in Queens,
Yes.
the teens that they were working with for the manga, right? And one of the things that they've spoken about is not only how smart these kids are, which is not surprising, right? But just how well versed they are with these characters in these series and how passionate they are, and just to have it taken away is just ridiculous, among other things.
It's heartbreaking, especially when you consider that manga is like growing. Like the kids can't get enough of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they really, that's all my own personal child, that's all she reads. And the studies that show like the vocabulary in manga and and then the studies of you're using different parts of your brain because of the pictures and the words, and they're cutting that. Like what?
Yeah, yeah.
What? And you look at the studies that show that um there's a large percentage of our students that feel unsafe at schools, but they feel the safest in school libraries. 9 out of 10, feel the safest in the school library, and we're cutting school libraries and funding, and we're harassing librarians. That's going to trickle down to the kids. They're doing a disservice to the kids, the most vulnerable of our
Mhm.
students too. So the historically marginalized populations, and and I see Valerie had put, will it be at ALA? The documentary, we're trying to get it at ALA and possibly ASL.
But
We're trying. There's a lot of red tape that I didn't know about.
I wish I was surprised by that, but yeah.
Cross fingers. I know tonight they're showing it at TLA to 1,000
Oh,
librarians.
nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I know it was at South by Southwest, so you got some folks watching.
yeah.
All right, we are at time, and I just want to thank you so much, not only for spending some time with us this afternoon, but just giving us a little bit of hope, right? And letting us know about those best small steps. I really love that question, about what we can do and how we can participate, and really just how we can survive. I was texting Valerie Birdfort. We just had a stupid bill passed, and it's just been a really rough week with IMLS, and we need to continue to be in community and to have these conversations, so we can get through it as a collective, much less as an individual. So I want to thank you so much for contributing to that. It's always an honor and a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. And now I'm going to go rush off. My
Yes.
kid is in a theater production tonight. Um, but thank you for having me. And y'all have thank you. It was an honor to speak anytime, anytime you ever ask. And y'all have a good rest of your day. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming today.